Hi everybody, Olivia Gersheim here with you all today for our EPIC CBO TA webinar. I don't think it's going to be a very long webinar today. We just have a few things to go over. We're going to review the dashboard numbers, and then we're going to talk about payroll and part-time employment for our customers and just a few updates we've made to the system. While I'm getting everything ready for our dashboard numbers, for anybody who has not checked in with your CBO agency, go ahead and do that. I will be covering that up here soon, but we'll have it pop in and out throughout the webinar. All righty. Get this opened. Okay, so for our dashboard numbers, I went through and pulled out some of the rows in the dashboard where we have customers sitting that we need to try to get them moved out of. The first column we have here is 2151s that are past due. If you have a 2151 past due, that means that you missed that 48-hour window. You have to upload that 2151 reflecting the customer's progress during that initial meeting, whether they showed up, didn't show up, were enrolled, were rejected. I think we only have one CBO, Tri-County, who has overdue 2151, so we just need to get that up to date. Our next row is enrollment required. So we have some customers who have a 2151 saying yes, they did show up to their initial appointment with the CBO, but they have not been enrolled yet, and we completely understand that customers are not always enrolled that same day. There may be assessment processes they're going through, and so we know that some of these may be here for a little while, but we just want to make sure they're not sitting there too long. So we have 4 in Albany Park, 4 in Central State Steer, 3 in Leslie Bates, 5 in National Able, and 1 in Springfield Urban League. And then for the 2151As past due, as you guys all know, between the 1st and the 5th of every month, we have to get those 2151As uploaded reflecting the customer's progress for the prior month. So we do have a few that are overdue. At Safe Haven, you have 2. CAPS Roseland, you have 1. And then Tri-County Urban League, you guys have 31 overdue. So you want to make sure you're getting those done right away because we're getting ready to start a new month here in just a couple days. And then the next row is the completion documentation needs uploaded. So if you have exited customer for any reason, there is some completion documentation needed depending on the exit reason. So you just need to be going in, looking at their exit information section. That'll let you know what documentation is needed for that customer based on their exit reason. So we have just a few there: Albany Park, CAPS, Cottage Grove, Inspiration Corporation, and Instituto, you all have 1, and Tri-County Urban League, you have 1 as well. And then our next row, we have DHS has indicated a couple of our EPIC customers are no longer SNAP eligible. So CBO action is needed. These customers need to be marked as did not complete, no longer SNAP eligible. We have 2 for Albany Park, 4 for Asian Human Services, 3 for Catholic Charities and CAPS Cottage Grove, 1 for Jane Addams, 1 for Mantricon, 2 for National Able, 1 for North Lawndale, and 1 for Springfield Urban League. And then our final column is referring to our ISEP dashboard. We have a couple of agencies that are missing the target occupations for some of their customers. A Safe Haven, you have 2. Albany Park, you have 1. Central State Steer, 2, Homework Hangout, 1, Inspiration Corporation, 2, Jane Addams, 1, Mantricon, 1, National Able, 2, North Lawndale, you guys have 31, Phalanx has 3, Rock River, 1, and Tri-County, you guys have 66 customers who need those target occupations entered in. So I'll be sending these out with the minutes. If you guys have any questions or anything on the numbers or you're not able to find somebody, feel free to go ahead and email me and we can get that figured out. Nancy says, I don't see any CBO action needed in our category on the grid. For which row, Nancy? Were you talking about the DHS indicator no longer SNAP eligible? You're right, Nancy. Catholic Charities does not have anything. If I accidentally said Catholic Charities, that's my bad. Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and jump right into our next agenda item. I'm going to get my screen up and sharing so I can kind of walk through this with you guys. The next thing we're going to talk about is payroll. So for anybody who is using or has work experience going on and has customers participating in that, you should be using the payroll system that we have in Epic. I just have test up right here, as I believe you can all see on my screen. So can you guys all see my screen okay? I want to make sure I'm showing you the right screen. So Catholic Charities, I have you guys showing as my example, but this is all just in test. I'll zoom my screen in here. So whenever you guys come in to do payroll, you'll go in to the Worksite Placement tab, and then you will click on Payroll. And this will already be filtered to your agency, but since I'm logged in as a super user, I see everybody. So for each payroll, you will put in the start and end date for the pay period. And after you do that, you will be able to download the payroll template. And as soon as it pops up, I'll throw it over so you guys can see what it looks like. So when you download this payroll template, it's going to auto-populate all the information that it has associated for each of the customers that have been assigned to a work site. So you don't have to worry about putting all this together. It'll pull it all out for you. The only thing that you have to update right here is the hours worked. So you will go in and put how many hours each of the customers worked for that pay period. One of the things that Dee noticed when she was going in and looking at these is that we have a lot of customers, once they're put in the work site, whenever it's pulling this report, if their end date isn't up, it's going to be still pulling them in for the payroll Excel sheet. And so we have a lot of customers you can see here who worked 0 hours. Only one customer actually worked any hours during this pay period, but it's showing all 8 of our customers. And in the payroll summary, it's saying that there's 8 customers and their total wages is 180, when in all honesty, it's really only one customer and the total wage for that one customer was 180. So if you have any customers, this is the example one I put together. So we have Epic. He did not work any hours this week. So what you guys can do is you guys can just delete these rows right out of the payroll. And MMA didn't work any hours, so we're going to delete them out too. And this will just help things be a little more cleaned up and look a lot better when we're going in and viewing them. It's also going to give you more exact information in that summary for whenever you guys are going in and reviewing them for yourselves. So you'll just delete those out. And then you will continue uploading payroll just as you normally do. It won't change anything. It's just going to clean up those files for us. And then once you got everything good, you can submit that. And then it's only going to show us the customers that we actually had hours input for. Do you guys have any questions on that at all? Okay, so I'm going to move on to our next agenda item, which looks at customers who are employed part-time. So we have gotten quite a few different questions from some of you guys about customers who are employed part-time and how that affects the retention process. So we have been working with DHS and kind of trying to figure this out and what the policy is behind all of this and whether it depended on how much they made or their wages. So I'm going to quickly go over some of the questions we got and some of the different answers DHS had given us. If you guys have any questions, you can definitely feel free to throw them in the chat pod, and I will do my best to answer them. If we need to reach back out to DHS again, we can definitely do that. We just want to make sure we are following policy the best we can. So always feel free to send me, Dee, Tammy, the EPIC email, any questions that you guys have. So one of the questions that we got is if a customer is working part-time, 20 hours a week, but they're earning $935 a month, would that be enough to consider the customer for retention because they are making the same amount somebody employed full-time could possibly make, but they're not working the 40 hours? So what DHS told us is that if a customer is working 20 hours a week and earning $935 a month, they would still not be considered for retention. A customer would need to be engaged for an additional 10 hours in order for retention to be met. So what it comes down to is a customer needs to be engaged 30 hours a week minimum in order to meet the retention requirement. So depending on how many hours the customer is working, you would just subtract that from the 30, and the remainder of those hours would be how many hours the customer needs to continue to be engaged in. So is retention in the EPIC program based on hours or pay? And it is based on that 30 hours a week. And then in both or either cases, what is the trigger for employment and retention? So the customer has to be employed in order to start that retention process, but they still have to be doing 30 hours a week in order to meet the retention requirement. So even if they're employed 20 hours and they're not doing that 10 hours extra, then that retention requirement is not being met, so that's not going to count. And then the final question we got is if the 30-hour week is not being met for retention, what is the CBO and the customer's obligation? For example, does the customer need to do additional job certs, and if so, how much? So the customer needs to meet the 30-hour minimum requirement a week. 10 hours of non-core activities can be added to meet that 30 hours a week as long as the core program expectation is being met. In this case, it would be the 20 hours a week of work. So I do see that I have some questions coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and jump over to your guys' questions. Dee's at a TA visit today, so she's not here to help me do everything. So bear with me as we go through these. So Judith from Safe Haven, or no, okay, Judith, perfect. That is completely understandable that they wouldn't have their target occupations entered in yet because they're still in the orientation process. So Nancy, so you can engage them for 10 hours if they're working 20 hours a week, then you will need to engage them in another 10 hours to be considered your retention. So if they were working 22 hours a week, you would only need to engage them in an additional 8 hours to meet that retention requirement. And then Domingo says, where can you find this information you are sharing right now? This is information that DHS sent me in an email, and I'm going to include it in our CBO minutes so you guys will have this all in writing and be able to refer back to it when you need to. And I'll also upload it to the EPIC CBO or the EPIC partner webpage with the related materials for this training video. And then Mary says, if the customer is working less than 30 hours a week and the case was canceled due to earning SNAP, then do they have an obligation to participate in job training, correct? Yes. So even if the customer loses those SNAP benefits, the retention requirements are still the same. Retention is for 90 days, and even if the customer loses their SNAP benefits during that 90-day retention, they are still eligible for retention services. I know I do have policy surrounding that. That's something we discussed a while back. So I can find that and get that sent to you too, Mary, so you have that for your reference. And then Jonathan says, in the regular SNAP JP program, DHS allows less than 30 hours for retention if the income is enough to cancel the SNAP benefits. Is that not the case for EPIC? Jonathan, based on what we have learned, no, it's not, but I will take your question and run it by DHS one more time just to make sure we're all on the same page. And if I hear something different from what I've told you guys today, we will go over that during our next webinar. So I'll make sure everybody knows, and I'll send that out as well. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yours was the same question as Mary. Even so, once they lose, yeah. So once they lose their SNAP benefits, if it's because of employment, then they will still have to meet that 30-hour week requirement. So Mary says, so if they don't want retention services and they don't want to be engaged in additional programs, what do we do? So Mary, if you're having issues with engaging the customer once they have become employed, what you'll want to do is add a case note into that customer's progress page, letting DHS know that you've reached out to them and you're trying to engage them in various retention services and are unable to do so. Obviously, we can't do a conciliation or sanction because for a lot of these customers, they may have already lost their benefits or they're in the process of losing their benefits, so they don't really care about the conciliation or sanction. DHS has told us that in the case that you're not able to get employment information or get them to communicate with you after employment, just to leave a case note and DHS will help facilitate that. And then we'll also have it documented in the system that you did attempt to reach out to them to engage them. That way, if there is any question, we can refer back to those and let everybody know that you were trying to do it, but the customer was not communicating or participating. And then Nancy Brown says, if they are employed 20 hours and not doing another 10, do we meet the employment benchmark but not the retention benchmarks? Nancy, that is a really good question. I will have to ask Tammy. I am not sure how she is counting those benchmarks, if it is based on hours or simply just them getting employed. Let me make a quick note of that. And I will ask Tammy, and we can go over that again next Wednesday and include that on next Wednesday's minutes so everybody's aware. Alrighty, and so Judith says, we have customers that are working verified by a credible source. We have no check stubs, only the amounts earned in the quarter. May we enter them in the system as employed? Yes, so you can exit the customer as employed without having pay stubs or anything like that. If you know for sure, like you said, from a credible source that they are employed and working, you can go ahead and exit them. You are going to want to try to get those pay stubs from them or some type of employment verification. You can use the, I believe it's the 3085. See if the employer can sign that. And then you can upload that into the system. But yes, you can go ahead and exit them in the system as completed and employed if you have verified it by a credible source. Or if the customer has, like you said, told you about it, told you how much they're earning, maybe they showed you a picture of a pay stub, but you don't physically actually have it. And then Nancy says, since we are just getting some clarification now, what is the effective date for this? Nancy, so since we have gotten some clarification on this now, for any customers that you have employed from this date on, we're going to want to make sure that we're doing that retention with. There's not much we can do for the customers who are already exited and have a job and have been out of the program for a while. Because obviously they're no longer on SNAP and we are not allowed to engage or do anything with them. So we'll just be for your customers exited for this point forward. So if you have anybody, maybe they've been exited for like a month and you still have 2 months of retention to go, just make sure for these next 2 months that you are meeting that 30-hour a week requirement for the retention. And then Kelsey says, Olivia, you may have said this, but where is the Word doc listed? Kelsey, are you referring to the one I have showing on my screen? Yeah, I have not posted this yet. I'm going to send it out in our minutes, and then I will also attach it. Let me show you where I will put it. I'm going to put it on the EPIC partner page. And it will be under training materials and videos. and it will be linked right here where it says PDF. When you click on that, it'll also be there as well. But I'll also send it out in a minute so you all have it in your email. Alrighty. Well, if we don't have any more questions about the exit information right now, we'll go ahead. Oh, wait. We have one more. Kelsey says, and regarding the information in the file pod, and she's still typing, the information in the file pod, I believe, is all from last week. I have not updated it. Those are all just there for your references, but none of them are new or updated. We haven't updated any documents recently. The next item we have on our agenda is some updates that we've made to the system. They are just minor updates, but I did want to go ahead and let you guys know about them. So the first update that we have, this is just a screenshot because I cannot get this on test, and I did not want to show somebody's real information looking at the Online Epic System website. So what this is the assessment tab. So for our customers, make sure I'm on test. If you click on a customer, and every customer has this assessment tab, and within the assessment tab, we're pulling various results that we have gotten if the customer has completed an assessment in Illinois WorkNet. It's taking a little while, but one of the assessments that we have in there is the Employment 101. And this was currently just showing white. There was nothing showing, but our programmer got it all up and working and fixed. So now if a customer has taken Employment 101, you will be able to see their pre-assessment results and the date it was taken, along with their post-assessment results and the date it was taken. And you can also download the certification of completion for that customer. And you also have access to view the customer's Employment 101 plan guides or guide plan. So as the customer is filling out Employment 101, they are also filling out their guide on the side as they go through each step. So you guys have access to that so you can kind of see where the customer's at, what the customer is thinking, and you can get to all that through the assessment tab. Our second update is in regards to the exit information, which I know you guys have heard me talk about many a times. But so for customers who are not enrolled with a CBO, cannot be exited by a CBO. So we were having some issues with that really throwing our dashboard numbers off because the system was super confused at how they were being exited if they weren't enrolled. So what we went ahead and did is we just locked down that exit piece, and you no longer see that until you have enrolled the customer. So I'll show you here kind of what it looks like now. So this is a customer who has been enrolled, so that won't work. I think that was the same customer I was on. So this customer has not been enrolled. So as you can see here, they do not have their completion information bar. That disappears. But as soon as we go in and enroll this customer, we will get that completion information bar. So if you guys go in and you don't see that and you get confused, just know that you will not see it until they were enrolled. Do you guys have any questions on the updates that we went over? Alrighty, well that was all that I had for us today on our agenda. If you guys have any questions or anything comes up later about today's webinar, feel free to send me an email or give me a call. I'll be here for the rest of the day. If you have not already checked in, please go ahead and do that before you log out of the webinar. If you've already done that, then you are free to go. I really appreciate all your guys' time, and I hope you have a hold on. Mantricon asks, are we finished with new referrals? Let me check. Make sure I'm not in test. So we are not finished with new referrals. It looks like we still have about 19 more customers to enroll before we reach that 5,000 randomly assigned mark. Autumn, I do know that some of the smaller DHS offices are shutting down their EPIC enrollment, especially if their region has already reached their numbers. I know, like, I think regions 4 and 5 had, like, hit their goal and surpassed it and were, like, at 150%. So some of those offices may be shutting down, but our bigger offices in Chicago, I know, are staying open the longest. But we still will have a few more customers coming in. Alrighty. Well, you guys all have a great rest of your day, and thanks so much for your time. Oh, I have Judith. Judith asked what Chicago's goal is, and Judith, you know, I am not sure. I know their goal is a little higher than everybody else's just because they have the largest amount of customers going through their FCRCs. I'm not sure, Judith. I will figure that out, and I will let you know. Yes, Carmen. So once we reach those 5,000 customers, we are going to, DHS is going to turn their attention to re-engaging all of the customers that have been randomly assigned into the EPIC group. A lot of those customers became ineligible during the beginning or middle of the program. DHS will be doing eligibility review checks on an occurring basis. I can't remember if they're doing weekly or biweekly, but then they will send a list of all the customers who have gained their eligibility back that are in the EPIC system to the FCRCs, so they can attempt to re-engage those customers and get them back to you guys to be engaged. And they're also going to be looking at all those new contact customers and referral rejected and making sure they are getting aligned and placed with proper CBOs. So you still will, even when we reach that 5,000 mark, you still will be getting customers coming back to you. It will not just be what you have is what you get. We're going to work to re-engage. We have a large chunk of customers who became ineligible. Let's see here. We have, this is test. Give me a second. Oh, if I can click on the right dashboard. I think we have around 700 customers who are ineligible. So there's 700 potential customers that we will be able to re-engage and get sent back to you guys. But I just want to double check to make sure I'm telling you accurate numbers. So yeah, we had 518 customers who lost their SNAP eligibility before they ever met with the CBO. So we'll be attempting to reach all of those customers. And then we also have 564 who lost their SNAP eligibility during their engagement with the CBO. So yeah, we have over 1,000 customers to try to get re-engaged. So they will be coming back to you guys at some point. Yes, Nancy, that is statewide. Do you guys have any other questions? Alrighty, well, I will let you all go now. But if anything else comes up, like I said, feel free to email, call, whatever you guys need. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and thanks again for all your time. Bye, everyone.